My name is Mona Jones, and I'm 32 years old. The first time my family handed me a camera like it was a birthright, I was 15 and Melissa was glowing beneath a mortarboard. Mom pressed her phone into my palm with that smile that sounded like please, but felt like inevitable. Sweetheart, you've got such a good eye. Click. Melissa, sunlit and radiant. Dad's proud profile, Mom's hand on Melissa's shoulder, Derek grinning at something I couldn't see. Everyone smiling, except me, because I was exactly where I'd be for the next decade. 3 steps back, steady hands, invisible. It wasn't malicious. That's the worst part. If they'd yelled, I could have pushed back. But they worshipped my usefulness. Useful girls don't make scenes. Useful girls make sure everyone's chin is angled right and nobody's blinking. Useful girls learn composition, download editing apps, and get very, very good at disappearing. By the time I was 25, I could herd 20 humans against a sunset and deliver 5 perfect frames before the light died. Holidays, anniversaries, Derek's engagement shoot in a park, where I stood ankle-deep in goose droppings so his fiancée's hair caught the wind just so. My cousin's wedding, where I hovered like a ghost behind the hired photographer, just in case, not because anyone asked me to work, just because everyone handed me a device and called it love. If you lined up our family's last 10 years on a wall, you'd see them grow older, happier, more complicated. You'd see new babies, expanding tables, cakes sliced in different kitchens. You'd also notice a conspicuous absence, me, the designated witness. The person who finally saw it wasn't me. It was Evan. He's the sort of man who puts both elbows on the table and still eats carefully. We'd been dating 6 months when he ran his fingers along the frames in my living room like he was reading Braille. "These are beautiful," he said, tracing the photo of Melissa's beach vacation. "Where are you?" I laughed, too fast. "Behind the camera." "In all of them?" I looked at the wall, the way you look at something you've seen 100 times and only recognize on the 101st. My family at Christmas, my parents at their anniversary, Melissa and Derek, and a rogue army of cousins in every configuration except one. "Pretty much," I said. Evan was quiet for a long beat. "That's kind of heartbreaking." "It's fine," I said, embarrassed by the lump stinging my throat. "Someone has to take them." "You're someone," he said gently, "and you belong in them." I wish I could say I changed overnight, but patterns aren't curtains. You don't just tug and they open. I kept saying yes. "Just one more," Mom would chirp, angling her jaw. "Mona never blinks anyway," Derek liked to joke. I was the furniture that made the room functional. If I stepped into frame, who would hold the ceiling up? We got engaged on a Tuesday, over takeout and shared earbuds. No speeches, no flash mobs. Just Evan sliding a small ring box across the placemat like a dare. "Do you want to spend the rest of your life being in the picture with me?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and it surprised me how much I meant both parts. We planned an intimate wedding. 50 people, a garden, a string quartet that could play Beyoncé when my grandmother wasn't listening. And I made one promise to myself that felt as radical as shaving my head. I would not take a single photo. Not of my bouquet, not of my reflection, not of my mother's dress, just for angle reference. I would exist. So I hired a professional, Diego Alvarez, mid-40s, all soft voice and hawk eyes, with a portfolio full of candids where people looked like secret versions of themselves. At our consultation, he asked, "What matters most to you in these images?" I didn't even think. "To be in them." He tilted his head, a half smile that didn't condescend. "You're the bride. You'll be everywhere." "You don't understand." And then I told him anyway. 10 years behind the lens, a family who equated my usefulness with love. A wall full of lives I'd curated with the inconvenient detail that mine didn't appear. He listened the way only people who've already decided to help listen. "I've seen this," he said. "Families fall into patterns. Someone becomes the archivist, and nobody archives the archivist." "Is it stupid to care this much about pictures?" I asked. "Photos are proof," he said. "Proof we were here. If you disappear from them, the record learns to forget you." We made a plan. He would run interference. He would be the wall between me and every eager hand holding a phone. "You're not to touch a camera on your wedding day," he said, mock stern. Evan saluted in agreement. I wish the story were only about me and Evan and Diego and how boundaries solved everything. But stories, like families, get crowded. There was also Mom and her perfectly weaponized sweetness. Melissa, queen of the practiced sigh. Derek, good intentions in a human suit. Grandma Ruth, who saw through everyone like windows. And a name I hadn't heard in 2 years that began circling the family group chat like a weather alert. Tessa, Evan's ex, a lifestyle influencer with a ring light for a halo and strong opinions about authentic warmth in skin tones. Melissa followed her. Melissa loved her presets. The universe is uncreative like that. 2 months before the wedding, at our combined family's rehearsal dinner, a long table, flicker candles, too many forks, Mom adjusted her pearls and slipped her phone into my hand. Sweetheart, can you grab one quick picture of us with Melissa and Derek? Just one. You're so good at making your father's profile behave. I set the phone down. I'm eating. It'll take a second. You can ask someone else. She blinked, as if I'd answered in a language we hadn't rehearsed. But you're so much better. I glanced at Evan. He shook his head once. A small no. The kind that says, I'm here. Mike, Mom said to Evan's brother, could you? Of course, Mike said, obliging. He took 3 shots. They were a little dark and a little crooked and perfectly fine. Mom peered, unsatisfied by the rough edges of average. Huh. It's... okay. That's the point, I said. Okay is enough. You get to be in it. After dinner, Derek cornered me by the kitchen doors, where the waitstaff flowed like a quiet river. What was that about? He asked. With Mom? I'm tired of being the tripod with a pulse, I said. It's just photos, Mona. Don't make it weird. I'm not making it weird. I'm asking to exist. He looked actually baffled, and the old shame slid under my skin like a splinter. Maybe I am being dramatic. Maybe I should just take the picture and stop needing anything. Evan found my hand, squeezed. On the rideshare home, my phone buzzed with a new text in the family thread from a number I hadn't saved. A little sun emoji, then... If you want, I can tweak the rehearsal pics. The tones are super cool. Warms would be way more flattering for your mom's complexion. Tessa. I stared at the name like it might bite. Melissa chimed in with 3 hard eyes. Yes, Tessa's edits are everything. A second text from Tessa. Also, does your photographer deliver raws? You'll want those, trust. Evan saw my face pale and leaned over. What's wrong? Nothing, I said, which is what women say when the room is suddenly flooding and we're calculating how fast the water is rising. At home, I took all the photos off my living room wall. Not as a statement, as an experiment. The paint behind them was a cleaner white, like the ghost of a gallery. I stacked the frames on the floor, felt the weight of glass. Evan stood in the doorway and watched me not cry. You don't have to prove anything, he said. I do, I said, but not to them, to myself. This ends at our wedding. He nodded. Then it ends. The next morning, Mom called. Your photographer? What's his name? Diego. He'll be fine with me grabbing backups on my phone, right? Just in case? No, I said. He won't. A silence as thin and sharp as a blade. You're being very intense about this. I'm being visible? Another text pinged from Melissa, but I didn't open it. I didn't need to see whatever polite pressure she'd lacquered with emojis. The ocean doesn't negotiate with the weather. It just is. The day after that, Diego emailed his timeline. Family formals blocked and labeled and scheduled like a military operation. At the bottom, a note. Mona, you are in every shot where you belong. If someone tries to hand you a phone, give it to me. I exhaled. For the first time in 10 years, I believed a simple sentence could change the way a story was told. I will be in the picture. And if certain ghosts from other people's past showed up with ring lights and presets and opinions, well, let them come. I had a photographer who knew the assignment, a partner who knew my heart, and 2 hands that no longer existed to hold other people's memories at the expense of my own. The lens was finally turning. On me. On us. On the space I'd earned and refused to give back. 2 weeks before the wedding, Diego sent me his polished schedule, blocked out down to the minute. Bridal prep shots at 10. Ceremony by 1. Family formals immediately after. His note at the bottom was like a protective spell. Remember, Mona, you are not touching a camera, not a phone, not even for a selfie. Leave the documenting to me. You exist in these frames. It should have made me relax, but instead my stomach knotted. Because I knew my family. I knew Mom's reflexes. I knew Melissa's sighs. I knew Derek's oblivious chuckle. and I knew exactly how invisible I could become if I didn't fight harder than I ever had. The rehearsal day arrived. The garden was soft green, chairs set in rows like disciplined soldiers, the air sticky with roses. Everyone was there. Evan's family, my family, friends milling around, pretending not to judge seating arrangements. Diego hovered quietly in the background, checking light angles, already my ally. Dinner that night was supposed to be casual. It wasn't. The long table was crowded with wine glasses, too many forks, and my mother's voice carrying like it always did when she wanted to command the mood. Halfway through the meal, she leaned over. "Mona, darling, you'll make sure the photographer gets the family formals right? You always know everyone's best sides." I swallowed a mouthful of water that felt like rocks. "That's Diego's job." "Yes, but you can supervise. You know how picky your father is about his profile. And Melissa's hair, sometimes it photographs too flat." "Mom," I cut her off, "I'm not supervising anything. I'm in the photos." The table went still. Forks paused midair. Melissa blinked, then laughed lightly, like I was a child stomping her foot. "Of course you'll be in them, but it doesn't hurt to oversee. You're good at it." "I'm done being good at it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I want to actually exist in my wedding pictures." A silence spread, thin and suffocating. Evan reached for my hand under the table and squeezed once. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His silence said, "I've got you." Later that night, as we drove home, my phone buzzed again. A message in the family chat. But it wasn't from Mom. It wasn't from Derek. It wasn't even from Melissa. It was from Tessa. Her name lit up my screen like a ghost. "Hey, Mona. So excited for your big day. I've been following Diego's work. So pretty. Quick cue, though. Does he give raws? You'll want them for flexibility." A little smiley face, like she belonged in the conversation, like she hadn't vanished from Evan's life years ago. Before I could type, Melissa chimed in with a string of heart emojis. "Yes, Tessa, you're the queen of edits. Can't wait to see what you do with them." I stared at the screen, blood pounding in my ears. Evan glanced over. "What's wrong?" "Your ex is offering to re-edit our wedding photos," I said flatly. Evan's jaw clenched. "Of course she is." The next morning, Diego called me directly. "So," he said calmly, "someone's already asked me about Roz." "Who?" My voice shook. "Your sister," he said. "Mentioned a friend who's really good at editing. I said no. My work is my work. But I thought you should know." I closed my eyes. Melissa. Of course, Melissa. Hiding Tessa's name under the safe word friend. My stomach twisted with fury, but beneath that was something worse. Fear. Fear that even on the day I'd carved out for myself, I would still be erased, smoothed out, handed to someone else's definition of perfect. That night, Evan found me pacing. "They're not going to win," he said, pulling me close. "Not your mom, not Melissa, not Tessa. This is your day, our day, and Diego's got your back." But I couldn't shake the unease, because families don't need to plot outright sabotage. They just need to keep doing what they've always done. Hand you a phone, call it love, and smile while you disappear. And my wedding day? I refused to vanish. The morning of my wedding dawned soft and golden, the kind of light photographers dream about. For once, I wasn't thinking about light. I was thinking about being seen. Diego arrived at 10 sharp, rolling cases of equipment like a soldier bringing weapons to battle. "Today," he said as he set up, "you don't lift a finger except to hold your bouquet." I laughed, but it came out shaky. He caught my eyes and added, "I mean it, Mona. If someone hands you a phone, you hand it to me." My hair was still pinned half up when Mom slipped into the bridal suite. Her pearls glinted, her perfume familiar and suffocating. She kissed my cheek, then glanced at the mirror. "You look beautiful," she said, before her gaze flicked toward Diego, adjusting a lens. "Oh, good, he's here. Mona, just make sure he gets my left side during the family shots. And your father hates profile angles, remember?" I set the bouquet down. "Mom, Diego knows what he's doing. I'm not directing anything." She blinked. "But you've always—" "Not today," I said firmly. Her lips tightened, but she didn't argue. Not yet. The ceremony was a blur of lace and sunlight, of Evan's steady hands, and the sound of Grandma Ruth's sniffles in the second row. For once, the cameras pointed at me. Not because I was holding them, because I was the bride. And then came the part I dreaded most, the family formals. "Okay," Diego announced, clapping once. "Let's start with the bride's family. Parents, siblings, step in." Mom immediately reached into her purse, pulling out her phone. I'll just grab some backups. No, Mrs. Jones, Diego said smoothly, stepping forward like a shield. That won't be necessary. I've got it covered. She hesitated. Just in case. Today you're not the photographer, Diego said gently, but firmly. You're the mother of the bride. Be in the frame. The words hung in the air. For a second, I thought she'd argue, but then she slowly, reluctantly, slipped her phone back into her purse and moved beside Dad. Click, flash. For the first time in years, there I was, standing in the middle, not behind the lens, not cut out, not erased. We moved through combinations, siblings, extended family, grandparents. Each time, Diego positioned me at the center. Each time, I could feel the unease ripple behind the smiles, like my family didn't quite know what to do with me standing there instead of working for them. Later, at the reception, as I danced with Evan under strings of lights, Melissa appeared at my elbow, her smile tight. Great day, she said. Diego's good, but, do you think he'll send the raws? I froze. Why? Well, Tessa could help. She's amazing with editing. She said some of the colors look a little flat. She could make them really pop. My blood turned cold. Melissa, no, absolutely not. These are my wedding photos, edited by the photographer I hired. They're not passing through Tessa's filters. Melissa's practiced sigh slid out like it had rehearsed for years. You're being difficult. It's not about you. It's about the family looking their best. I stared at her, stunned. It is about me. It's my wedding, and I won't let my fiancé's ex rewrite the memory of it. Evan appeared then, as if summoned. He slipped an arm around my waist. Is there a problem? Melissa's smile faltered. Of course not, just trying to help. She walked away, leaving me trembling but certain. For the first time in years, I hadn't bent. I hadn't swallowed my words. I had said no. And though I smiled for the rest of the night, inside me, a storm churned, because I knew Melissa wouldn't let it go. And with Tessa in the wings, waiting to reframe my story, this was only the beginning. The wedding glow should have lasted longer. The flowers were still drying in a vase on our kitchen counter when Mom called, her voice honeyed. Dinner this Sunday, she said. Everyone's coming. We'd love for you and Evan to join. It'll be nice. To get back to normal. Back to normal. The words prickled. Normal meant me behind the camera, the ghost and family albums. But Evan nudged me as if to say, go, face it. So I agreed. That Sunday, the Jones dining table was crowded. Melissa and her husband Derek with his wife, nieces and nephews fidgeting in high chairs, my parents presiding at either end. The smell of roast chicken hung thick in the air. Conversation flowed like nothing had changed. How was the honeymoon? Derek asked. Lovely, I said. Melissa raised a glass. Your photographer did a wonderful job. Her tone made it sound like she was surprised. Then dessert came, and with it, the phone. All right, everyone, Mom said brightly, rising from her chair. Let's get a family photo. It's been too long. She pressed her phone into my hand like muscle memory. I didn't move. Mona, sweetheart, she said, still smiling. Take the picture. No. The word dropped like a stone into water. The table stilled. Even the children went quiet. What? Mom asked. I'm not taking it. Ask someone else. Her smile faltered. But you always take them. And I'm always not in them, I said, my voice steady, but my pulse hammering. I'm done. Silence. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Melissa rolled her eyes. You're making this complicated, Mona. No, I said. I'm making it fair. Either we ask someone outside this table to take the picture so everyone is in it, or we don't take one at all. Evan put his hand over mine under the table. She's right, he said simply. Mom's gaze darted around, searching for rescue. Derek, do you mind? Before he could answer, Evan stood. I'll ask our server. He was gone before anyone could protest, returning with a young woman in an apron, her hands still damp from washing dishes. Happy to help, the server said cheerfully. Where do you want me to stand? The family rearranged reluctantly. Melissa's children whined. Dad muttered about angles. But in the end, I stood between Evan and my father, facing the lens instead of hiding behind it. The server snapped 5 quick shots. Beautiful family, she said, handing the phone back to Mom. Thank you, Evan said, slipping her a tip. We sat down again. The air was strange now, tight, brittle, like glass that might crack. That was unnecessary, Melissa muttered into her napkin. What was? I asked. The whole scene, making Mom ask a stranger. You could have just taken one quick photo. And not been in it again? I snapped. Like the last 10 years? Melissa groaned. Oh my God, are we still on this? You're acting like we erased you from history. You did, I said, louder now. Not intentionally, but you did. Hundreds of family photos, and I'm in maybe a dozen. And when I finally say something, I'm told I'm making it weird, or dramatic, or difficult. Derek cleared his throat. Mona, you were the one holding the camera. Because you all put it in my hands, I said. Every time. And you never noticed that meant I disappeared. The table went quiet. My mother's voice trembled. We never meant to hurt you. I know, I said. But you did. And pretending it didn't happen doesn't make it better. For the first time in my life, I saw Mom's eyes fill with tears. She looked down at her plate like the truth on it was too heavy to lift. Dad finally spoke. So what do we do now? I looked at him, at all of them, my voice breaking. You let me exist. You let me be in the photos. You let me be part of the family memory instead of its servant. That's all I've ever wanted. Nobody had an answer. Dessert sat untouched. Conversation limped back in stilted phrases. When Evan and I left that night, the air outside felt sharper, cleaner, like a storm had broken but hadn't yet passed. I knew one thing. The next battle wasn't far away. Because families don't change in a single dinner. They resist. They rewrite. They gaslight. And my family? They'd been doing it for years. Grandma Ruth turned 90 in March. The invitation said casual family gathering, but in my family, casual meant 3 casseroles, 3 bottles of wine too many, and everyone subtly competing over who loved Grandma best. Evan and I arrived early with a bouquet of white lilies and a wrapped package, a photo album I'd restored from old scanned prints. Actual, tangible photographs. No filters. No edits. Just the messy truth of people existing. Grandma's house smelled like lemon polish and old lace. She sat in her favorite chair by the window, wearing a pale blue cardigan, her hair pulled back in a silver braid. When she saw me, her face lit up. There's my invisible granddaughter, she said with a wicked grin. Not invisible anymore, Grandma, I answered, hugging her tight. About time, she said, patting my cheek. Then she turned to Evan. And you must be the one who finally made her realize she matters. Evan smiled. I just reminded her of what she already knew. The living room filled quickly. Cousins, aunts, uncles, kids weaving between legs. Phones were out immediately, snapping selfies, group shots, candids. I noticed something peculiar. Every time someone suggested a group photo, there was a pause, a shuffle. Eyes flicking toward me. And then someone else volunteered. For the first time in years, nobody handed me a phone. It was progress, though it didn't feel natural yet. Halfway through the party, Mom stood and clapped her hands. Okay, everyone. Big family photo with Grandma. All generations. Let's squeeze in. She fiddled with a tripod she'd clearly bought new. Mona showed me how to use the timer, she announced, though I never had. She pressed buttons, a little clumsy, but determined. The camera clicked down. 3, 2, 1. Flash. Again and again. Finally, she checked the screen, relief softening her shoulders. When she caught my eye, she held out the phone. Do these look all right? I studied the shot, 40 people crushed together around Grandma, smiles uneven, a baby crying in the corner. Mom was in the frame, Dad too, and me. Right there in the middle, hand on Evan's arm. They look great, I said. You're in this one, Mom. Her expression shifted, something fragile flickering across it. She nodded. I see that. Later, as guests scattered for cake, she pulled me aside. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard. I've been thinking about what you said at dinner, about being erased. Mom! No, let me finish. Her eyes glistened. I went through our albums, all of them. Printed and digital. And you were right. You're barely in any. I never noticed. That's on me. For a second, I couldn't speak. My throat closed. I've been practicing, she added with a small laugh. Taking photos myself, using timers, asking people to help. It's harder than it looks. You made it look easy, Mona. We got lazy. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest she'd ever come. And somehow, it was enough. As the party wound down, Grandma beckoned me with a crook of her finger. Come, I have something. She shuffled to her bedroom, opened a closet, and pulled out a thick, faded album. This was before you were born. Your grandfather took most of them. I opened the pages. Photos from the 70s, colors fading to orange. My mother as a child. Derek as a toddler. Melissa in pigtails. And in nearly every shot, My grandfather, smiling, arms wrapped around someone, present. He was in the mall, I whispered. Sometimes behind the lens, Grandma said. But he always made sure he was in plenty, too. He said proof of your life matters. She touched the cover. He would have understood what you've been feeling. He'd tell you not to disappear. She pressed the album into my hands. Now it's yours, so you remember to exist. My chest tightened. I hugged the book like it was oxygen. When Evan and I left, the sky was violet, the street lamps just flickering on. In the car, he glanced at me. You okay? I looked down at the album in my lap, the weight of decades pressing against my palms. For the first time in a long time, I said, I think I am. But I knew this wasn't the end. Families don't shift overnight. Melissa still hadn't spoken to me directly all evening, and if I knew her, she'd find another way to remind me I was difficult. Still, something had cracked. And maybe, just maybe, something new could grow in the fracture. A month after Grandma's party, a heavy package arrived at my door. 3 thick albums, neatly labeled in Mom's looping handwriting. Family Memories, Volume. Evan was the one who carried them inside. Your mom's handwriting? He asked, eyebrows raised. I nodded, hesitant. Looks like it. That night, I sat cross-legged on the living room rug with the albums spread around me. Evan opened a bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses, and settled beside me like we were preparing for a ritual. Page after page, the evidence hit me like punches. Thanksgiving spreads, Christmas trees, birthday candles, Melissa's children growing from babies to toddlers, Derek's wife glowing through pregnancies, my parents hosting, my cousins celebrating, and me, a ghost, occasionally blurred in the background, a reflection in a window. A fraction of a shoulder cut off at the edge. I tried to laugh, but it cracked. See, I really wasn't exaggerating. Evan put his arm around me. It's brutal, he admitted, but now they've seen it too. I turned another page, and then I saw it, tucked into the back sleeve of the final album, a single printed photo from the wedding. The family formal Diego had taken, all of us together, Evan at my side, me at the center. My smile real. My mother beside me, her hand barely touching my arm, and underneath, in her handwriting, the first of many, love, Mom. I stared at the words until they blurred. My throat burned. For years I had begged silently just to be acknowledged, to be seen. And here it was, not a full redemption, not the repair of a decade's worth of erasure, but a start. The months after that weren't perfect. Melissa still rolled her eyes when I insisted on using a timer for group shots. Derek fumbled awkwardly with my phone at barbecues. Dad still grumbled about his profile, but something had shifted. Slowly, grudgingly, the habit of excluding me began to break. At Easter, Melissa's daughter tugged my sleeve. Aunt Mona, we're taking a photo. Come stand with us. She pulled me into the frame before anyone could hand me a phone. At a cousin's birthday, Derek stopped me mid-step. Nope, stay there. You're in this one. He shoved his own phone at a stranger and jogged back into place. And one evening, as Evan and I flipped through Grandma's old album together, he whispered, See, your grandfather knew. He left proof so you'd never forget you belonged. The change wasn't dramatic. There was no sweeping apology, no tearful reconciliation where everyone suddenly understood. Families rarely work that way. Instead, there were small adjustments, awkward pauses, subtle corrections. And maybe that was better, because it wasn't about one grand gesture. It was about repetition, about forming new patterns to overwrite the old. It took 10 years for me to disappear. I knew it would take longer to fully reappear, but now I had proof that it was possible. Proof on glossy paper, tucked in an album, signed in my mother's hand. The first of many. And for once I believed her.